Joost de Bruin Tokinua. My name is Joost de Bruin. I'm the director of the Hundertwasser Art Center. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to the Hundertwasser Art Center with Paira Māori Art Gallery for our panel discussion, our conservation panel discussion. I'm going to quickly introduce the panel members to you, and after that we won't get started straight away. We'll first have about 20 minutes for you all to get a drink, get some food, talk to each other, and at 6 o'clock, that's when we'll start with the actual panel discussion. So we have 5 panelists today. The first one is Richard Smart from the Hundertwasser non-profit foundation. Richard is the New Zealand representative of the foundation. So this is Richard. You have come to a unique building. The Hundertwasser Art Center with Paira Māori Art Gallery is one of just over 40 authentic Hundertwasser buildings in the world. Hundertwasser is all about architecture in harmony with nature, and that is what this building represents. We have tree tenants growing out of the windows. We have an afforested roof on top of the building. We have organic forms and shapes all around us. We do not have grid structures. We do not have straight lines. So this center has a particular feel that is in line with what Hundertwasser was advocating for. Hundertwasser was first and foremost a painter. That is how he identified himself. But later in life, he became an architect. He was forced to become an architect because he felt that architects weren't doing their job properly. I think all throughout his career and his life, he was an environmental activist. And that role was perhaps the most important of all to him. Here at the Hundertwasser Art Center, we are very lucky because Hundertwasser has left behind an enormous legacy for us. Not just his art, his architectural models, his ecological work, but also a lot of written material, manifestos, speeches, media appearances, posters. Behind me is the Conservation Week poster that Hundertwasser did in 1974, which is exactly 50 years ago. So we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of this poster that Hundertwasser did only 1 year after arriving to Aotearoa, New Zealand for the first time. And this year, because it is the 50th anniversary, we've had the poster reprinted, and it is available for sale in our museum shop if you're interested. The poster is also significant because it was the first one that Hundertwasser did. And after that, when he discovered that posters were a successful medium to communicate with mass audiences, he did more posters. If you've been to our exhibition upstairs, the final room has posters all around the room that Hundertwasser designed to support different environmental projects. So he's very passionate about this. It's very important to him. In many ways, Hundertwasser was ahead of his time in the kind of things that he was thinking about and asking for attention for. And those issues that he identified are still so relevant today.
Hi everybody, welcome again. Lots of welcomes tonight. The key bit is we open it up for you to ask questions. You can ask an individual panellist, you can ask a general question. It may be answered by one of our panellists, it may be answered by all of our panellists. But what we're really wanting to encourage is that you have a participatory conversation and share all sorts of different thoughts on the topic of nature and conservation. Okay? So I'm just going to hand over to Richard.
Okay, thank you. Welcome everybody. Richard Smart, as has been mentioned, and I represent the Hundertwasser Foundation. And how I got there was I used to work for Hundertwasser on his property at Karanui. Karanui is in one of the waterways, offshoots to the Bay of Islands, and that was one of the reasons he chose that property, because it did have access, water access to the Bay of Islands. I spent about 8 years working for him there, so I did have little time to observe Karanui developing. Now, his main focus when he got to Karanui was to return territories to nature. You often read that with Hundertwasser. It was a dairy farm, pretty hard out, very steep dairy farm, would have struggled to be financially viable, I would imagine. But he started replanting trees straight away, reforesting the place. There's most of the land at the moment, or in the end, he bought a few pieces extra around it to make it, it was about 400 hectares. So most of it is forest, and it's got some pretty special secret locations like that. I once asked him about, shouldn't he share this huge puriri tree and, get it listed and protected? And he said, no, don't tell anybody where it is, because as soon as people know where it is, somebody's going to want to cut down. And this was sort of a fixation of his, was the trees being cut down everywhere. And so he was on a mission to reforest. And just like on our roof here, when he built a building, it had to be forested. And so he was on that track, on the same focused heading his whole life. He never vied one way and then the other way. But he saw this problem as a global problem. It wasn't so much he wanted to save this little area, this indigenous area, and put all these indigenous plants back. He saw deforestation as a sort of a global issue that had to be addressed globally. So just plant trees. Plants were good, all kind of plants. He did have problems with various invasive species on his property, and he did kind of reluctantly say, all right, you've got to deal to that. And there are a few things that are an ongoing problem down there, but they're a problem like ginger and Iliagnus and things like that. And when I see how difficult they are to manage down on his property, when I'm driving on the road and I see Iliagnus growing along the roadside, and I'm thinking, why isn't the council taking care of that? Because that's going to be all over the place next week when the birds spread those seeds. So it is a big problem that everybody is going to have to deal with more and more and more. But as I say, his focus wasn't on weed species or things like that. He was just letting things grow, get the forest back again. And he was able to practice that at Karanui. He was very much a person who practiced what he preached. And as I say, he kept that going his whole life. He didn't veer off on any tangents. So that time I had with him, about 8 years, was very interesting, not just from a conservation point of view, but from all points of view. I was lucky enough to work on models of his architecture that would be sent to New Zealand, and he would work on them there, and we'd have to send them back and come back and forth like that sort of thing. So it was very interesting. Yeah, that's about my reason for being here, and if anybody's got questions, we'll get to them.